I oppose the bill before us today, which would raise utility bills and energy prices, would worsen the climate crisis, put polluters over public health, and abandon stewardship of our national parks, all to benefit billionaires and big corporations. We are in the middle of a cost of living crisis. President Trump promised to lower costs on day one, but instead, he and House Republicans are making the cost of living crisis even worse. The big ugly law is handing massive tax breaks to billionaires and to the biggest corporations while driving up energy costs for homes and for businesses. Today, we are considering another House Republican bill which will raise costs for struggling working families, the working class, middle class. It will damage our public lands, promote dirty energy, threaten Americans' health by exposing them to more polluted air and water. Never mind that we never received a complete budget from the White House. We are holding this markup in a completely unprecedented time, with Congress's authority being challenged by a lawless administration. Since taking office, the Trump administration has stolen resources appropriated by this committee, passed by Democrats and Republicans in the House and in the Senate, for programs and services across the federal government, including several in this bill that help to lower costs for the middle class and working class, protect vulnerable populations, and keep our environment clean. The administration has unlawfully frozen, attacked, and destroyed grants that help tribes with hazard mitigation, grants that support the recovery of endangered species, grants that decrease flooding risks, and the grants that help restore areas damaged by floods and wildfires. Scores of public servants were laid off, and the Environmental Protection Agency just announced it will be eliminating its entire Office of Research and Development, impounding $749 million of funds appropriated by Congress. These cuts are not numbers on the page. They're not only felt in Washington, D.C., they affect all of our communities. Mary, a Connecticut grandmother, was devastated when her granddaughter, a trained EMT, skilled ice climber, and member of the Alpine Rescue Team, was fired from her job at Mount Rainier National Park. Mary's granddaughter had worked for the National Park Service for over 5 years, but because she had transferred to Mount Rainier less than a year ago, she was technically a probationary employee. Doge and Elon Musk decided that Mary's granddaughter's public service was less valuable than another tax break for billionaires. Lost and injured climbers in Mount Rainier National Park will pay the price. I ask my colleagues, do your constituents consider our national parks waste, fraud, and abuse? Did they come to your town halls and complain that there were too many employees at national parks? I doubt it. All of the departments, agencies, and programs whose funding has been stolen, Congress enacted and appropriated funding for is in the law. They are substituting Congress's decisions and judgment with their own, turning Article 1 of the Constitution on its head. Unfortunately, this bill doubles down on President Trump's pro-pollution and anti-environment, anti-parks agenda. Because of this bill, families will pay more at the pump and on their utility bills thanks to deep cuts to funding for infrastructure and the removal of important vehicle emissions regulations. This bill abandons our children, and our grandchildren will have to confront an ever-worsening climate crisis by eviscerating the EPA, reducing science funding, promoting fossil fuel lease sales on public lands, and deconstructing critical emissions regulations. This bill will worsen Americans' health by ending enforcement of numerous Clean Water Act and Clean Air Act regulations, as well as hazardous waste and pesticide laws, and by allowing corporations to spew toxic pollution into our communities. And this bill slashes the funding for national parks and exploits our public lands for the sake of corporate profits. Underfunding the National Park Service, especially after DOJ eviscerated Park Service standing, means fewer seasonal employees, making it more difficult and cumbersome for our constituents to visit, to enjoy this nation's beautiful parks. And the 332 million annual visitors to the parks are vital to the economy of so many states. Funding for the Smithsonian Institution, the National Endowment for the Arts, the National Endowment for the Humanities is severely cut, diminishing and suppressing education of America's culture, history, and values. I headed up the Arts Council of Greater New Haven. I opened the New Haven's International Festival of Arts and Ideas every year. Celebrating America's achievements and contributions to the arts is critical to our national identity and unity. And these programs ensure all Americans can enjoy our shared culture. The arts and humanities are the soul of this nation. Americans cannot keep up with the ever-increasing cost of living, but instead of working with Democrats to make investments that can help to lower costs, protect our environment, preserve our public lands and institutions, Republicans have put forward a bill that favors billionaires and corporations' right to pollute, destroy the environment over the health and safety of the American people. Cannot support this bill, and I urge my colleagues to vote no. I yield back.